Hi everyone and welcome back to Artful. Today we're going to be having a look at some water brushes and some ink. Let's see what we can make with them.
With a water brush, you're basically cutting out that middleman of dipping your paintbrush into a pot of water. You unscrew the water brush and fill it with water so you constantly have your own little reservoir. What I'm drawing here, I really wanted quite a light, consistent grey tone, so you'll see that I'm adding a bit of pressure to the brush, so I'm squeezing a bit more water out to get this light grey. Today I'm going to be drawing Portmeirion in Wales. Very lovely place, very interesting textures and buildings and greenery. You can follow along if you want, but I would get used to those brushes first before putting them onto any work that you wouldn't want to spoil. When I'm drawing the base layers, like a lot of things I would draw, I try and have as light a tone as possible, so if I do need to go over them again and I've made a mistake, then I can go over them with a darker colour and kind of hide that mistake. A lot of art is hiding your mistakes. I do want a quite consistent light grey tone when drawing the building. What's great about these water brushes, they're very accommodating for adding quite finer details. So like here I'm drawing these small stone columns on the roof and I'm able to hold it like a pen and add these fine details. But because it is a brush, you can also add washes. So I'm adding these washes here for details on top of the building. To do a wash, you just need some ink and a lot of water. I'm attempting to do a wash here, but you can see I've maybe not put as much water as I'd have liked, so I should squeeze a bit more water out to get what I'd like. You'll see that's a bit better. See, there's a bit more fluidity, it's a bit more loose. You want to keep what you're drawing in the foreground quite dark, because whatever is in the foreground of a composition is usually darker than what's in the background of a composition. Obviously that gets a bit complicated when there's multiple light sources, but for the purposes of this tutorial, try and keep whatever's in the foreground darker than whatever's in the background. And a way you can test this is by holding up your finger, moving it closer to your eye, and you'll see that your finger starts to get darker as the light disappears. These are brick walls, or will be brick walls, so I'm adding a lot more ink to these because they're the foreground of the image and I want them a lot darker than the background. I'm adding a bit more ink here for the shadow underneath this veranda, or this balcony. I don't know what you name this building really. Yes, I've added a very black for this shadow. I'm adding the foliage and greenery in the background now, and I've added a lot of water to my brush here because this is what will be in the background of my image, so I don't want it to, be overbearing. I'm keeping it quite light, so whatever I've drawn already in the foreground is a lot darker. What I'm drawing in Portmeirion, there was a lot of rock faces and a lot of greenery in the background, so I do have a lot of contrasting tones. But you can see you can be quite loose with your application of the ink, and that's lovely. It really gives a nice quality to it. Oop, I've added a bit more black there than I wanted to, but I can use that as a little reservoir of ink, and using a bit more water I can draw away that ink if I want to. If you do make a mistake like that, you can just get a bit of tissue paper and dab it off. But I don't know, sometimes I just like to roll with my mistakes and see what I can make. Now I'm adding the buildings. Again, I'm using a very light grey because I don't want them to be darker than the building under in the foreground. And again, that brush is brilliant for drawing these very fine details like the windows and the doors. Now adding details like tiling to some roofs in the background. You can see with this wash is already dried, so now I can ink over it. This was my brick wall, and that initial wash is completely dry, so I am going over it again with the darker ink to give the impression of bricks. When you go over these already done washes, it can give your work a bit of texture and a bit of life. I like to go back over shading I've done earlier in the piece and add a bit more shadow. And when adding shadow, always remember where the light is hitting from. So if it's hitting from the right, then all your shadow will be coming from the left and vice versa. And there you go, there's a nice ink painting or ink drawing of Portmeirion done with water brushes.
I absolutely adore drawing with ink because it dries so quickly, and if you're a bit like me, you just want to get your ideas out there as quickly as possible. You can make such interesting pieces of artwork just using the black ink because you get all these different tones and contrasts, and it really looks quite striking and quite beautiful, and it's just black and white and monochromatic. Let us know in the comments how you got on with your water brushes and your inks, or if there's any other techniques or mediums that you'd like us to cover. Like and subscribe to our YouTube to see other tutorials that we've done, and why not visit artful.co.uk. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you again soon.